Marcus Reeves, a homeless single father living in a shelter because of a billionaire's development project, found himself face to face with that same desperate billionaire on the edge of a skyscraper rooftop. Every fiber of his being screamed to walk away and let karma run its course. But the words tumbled out before he could stop them. Please don't do this. Whatever it is, it's not worth it. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The words came out before Marcus Reeves could stop them. His voice, raw and desperate, carried across the rooftop terrace through the crisp autumn air. Please don't do this. Whatever it is, it's not worth it. The well-dressed man perched on the ledge didn't turn around. His expensive suit caught the golden rays of the setting sun, 60 floors above the bustling city streets. From this height, cars looked like toys, people like ants. One small step, and all worldly problems would vanish into nothingness. You don't know me, the man replied, his voice eerily calm. You don't know what I've done. Marcus took a cautious step forward, his worn-out shoes scraping against the concrete. He shouldn't even be here. This exclusive rooftop bar atop the Richardson Tower was for the city's elite, not for someone like him. He'd slipped past security during a catering delivery, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might spare some change. Instead, he'd found this man contemplating the ultimate escape. You're right, I don't know you, Marcus admitted, inching closer. But I know what it looks like when someone's ready to give up. I've been there myself. The businessman's shoulders stiffened slightly, the first indication he was truly listening. My name's Marcus, he continued, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. I have a daughter. She's 7. Her name is Lily. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the wind whistling between the skyscrapers. Then the businessman turned his head slightly, offering Marcus a glimpse of his profile. Handsome, distinguished, maybe mid-50s. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon. Why are you telling me this? Marcus swallowed hard. Because 3 years ago, I was standing exactly where you are now. Different buildings, same view. He paused, the memory still painful. My wife had died. I'd lost my job. I couldn't see how to go on. The businessman didn't respond, but he didn't turn away either. Marcus took another step forward. What stopped me was thinking about Lily. Who would walk her to school? Who would chase away the monsters under her bed? Who would tell her that her mother loved her more than anything in this world? A gust of wind swept across the rooftop, carrying with it the faint sounds of life continuing below. Honking horns, distant sirens, the percussion of a city in perpetual motion. My problems didn't disappear, Marcus continued, but I stepped back that day because I realized some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. The businessman's hands gripping the ledge with white knuckles trembled slightly. My daughter, he said so quietly Marcus almost missed it. She won't even speak to me anymore. Progress, connection. Marcus nodded even though the man couldn't see him. What's your name? A long pause. Edward. Edward Richardson. The name struck Marcus like a physical blow. Edward Richardson, the billionaire developer whose name adorned this very building, the man whose company had recently demolished Marcus's apartment building to make way for luxury condominiums, forcing him and dozens of other families into homelessness. For a brief, terrible moment, Marcus was tempted to step back, to let karma run its course. The irony was almost too perfect, but he pushed the thought away immediately, disgusted with himself. Edward, he said instead, whatever happened between you and your daughter, I guarantee that your death would only make it worse. Unbeknownst to both men, the service door to the rooftop had silently opened. Olivia Richardson stood frozen in the doorway, one hand covering her mouth to stifle a gasp. She had come looking for her father after receiving his cryptic text, "I'm sorry for everything," only to find him teetering on the edge of oblivion while a stranger in tattered clothes pleaded for his life. Her father shook his head, oblivious to her presence. "You don't understand. I've built an empire by destroying lives. I've sacrificed everything, my marriage, my relationship with my daughter, my own soul for what? More zeros in a bank account? Buildings with my name on them?" His voice cracked. "Can't undo what I've done." Marcus took another step closer, now just a few feet away. "Maybe not. But you can change what you do next." Edward turned further, enough to look Marcus in the eye. "Why do you care? You're clearly struggling yourself." His gaze swept over Marcus's threadbare jacket, the holes in his jeans. "Why stop a man you've never met from jumping?" Marcus held his gaze. "Because my daughter isn't the only one who needs her father. Yours does too." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run to her father, to pull him back from the ledge, but something told her to wait, to let this unexpected savior finish what he'd started. "She hates me," Edward said, his voice hollowed by conviction. "And she should." "I don't believe that," Marcus replied. "Children don't hate their parents. They hate feeling abandoned, betrayed, or forgotten. But given the chance, they'll choose love every time." Edward's gaze drifted back to the city sprawled before him, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk descended. "I've missed so many chances, but not this one," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Not today." The rooftop fell silent. Olivia held her breath, tears streaming down her face as her father stared at the outstretched hand of a homeless man who had every reason to hate him, yet chose compassion instead. After what felt like an eternity, Edward Richardson, titan of industry, builder of empires, reached out with a trembling hand and grasped Marcus's weathered palm. With careful, deliberate movements, He stepped back from the ledge. The moment his feet touched the solid rooftop, Olivia could contain herself no longer. "Dad!" she cried, rushing forward. Edward spun around, shock and shame washing over his face in equal measure. "Olivia? How?" She threw her arms around him, holding him with a ferocity that took them both by surprise. "Your text," she managed between sobs. "I was so scared." Marcus stepped back, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this private moment. He turned to leave quietly, his purpose fulfilled. "Wait," Edward called after him. "Please." Marcus paused, turning back to face the father and daughter. "I don't even know how to begin thanking you," Edward said, one arm still around his daughter. Marcus shook his head. "Necessary. Just ... single quotes." He hesitated, then decided honesty was the only gift he had to offer. "Just remember this moment the next time you're making decisions that affect people's lives." Edward's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "The Morrison Street apartments," Marcus said quietly. "Your company demolished them last month. 43 families lost their homes. My daughter and I have been staying at the West Side shelter ever since." Olivia's eyes widened as she looked from her father to Marcus and back again. Edward's face paled as comprehension dawned. "You knew who I was," he said, "the whole time you were talking me down." Marcus nodded once. "I recognized you from the newspapers. And still, you ... Single quotes. Edward couldn't finish the sentence, overwhelmed by the implication. "Like I said, everyone deserves a second chance," Marcus replied. "Even billionaires." An uncomfortable silence fell over the rooftop as the full weight of the situation settled around them. The city continued its symphony below, oblivious to the drama unfolding above. Finally, Edward straightened his shoulders and extended his hand to Marcus. "I made a terrible mistake today, but you stopped me from making it permanent. I can never repay that debt." He paused, something resolute settling in his expression. "But I can try to right some other wrongs." Marcus looked at the offered hand, the manicured nails, the expensive watch peeking from beneath a custom suit sleeve, and remembered his own words about second chances. He reached out and shook it firmly. "My card," Edward said, reaching into his pocket with his free hand. "Call my office tomorrow. I want to talk about those apartments. And about a job. A real one." Olivia watched the exchange, her tear-stained face reflecting both the fading sunlight and a newfound hope. In the span of minutes, she had nearly lost her father forever, only to witness not just his salvation but perhaps the beginning of his redemption. As Marcus accepted the card, a small, genuine smile crossed his face for the first time in months. "I should go," he said. "Lily will be waiting for me at the shelter. She worries." "Of course." Edward nodded, his arm tightening around his daughter's shoulders. "Tomorrow, then." Marcus turned to leave, this time without interruption. As he reached the service door, Olivia called after him. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice carrying the weight of everything words couldn't express. Marcus nodded once in acknowledgement, then disappeared through the door, leaving father and daughter alone on the rooftop as night settled over the city that, for the first time in years, held promise for all three of them. The West Side shelter was a converted gymnasium that smelled of industrial cleaner and too many bodies in too small a space. When Marcus walked through the doors that evening, the usual cacophony of crying children, muttered conversation, and the clatter of meal service faded to background noise as his eyes sought out the one person who mattered. Lily sat cross-legged on their assigned cot, hunched over a dog-eared library book. Her dark curls fell across her face, and her lips moved silently as she read. The sight of her safe, absorbed, existing hit Marcus with the same wave of gratitude it always did. After everything they'd lost, they still had each other. "Daddy," she exclaimed when she spotted him, launching herself into his arms with the blind faith that he would always catch her. "You're late. Miss Alina said I could wait up for you." Marcus hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of the shelter's generic shampoo in her hair. "Sorry, sweet pea." Something unexpected came up. Elena Rodriguez, one of the shelter volunteers, approached with a tired smile. She was worried, she said quietly. "Wouldn't eat dinner until I promised you were coming back." A familiar pang of guilt twisted in Marcus's chest. "Thanks for looking out for her." Elena nodded. "There's a plate for you in the kitchen if you're hungry," Marcus thanked her, then turned his attention back to his daughter. "How about we get ready for bed and I'll tell you about my adventure today?" Lily's eyes widened. "A real adventure? With dragons and princesses?" "No dragons," Marcus smiled, "but there was a princess of sorts, and a tower, and a man who needed help finding his way." Later, as Lily drifted off to sleep beside him on their narrow cot, Marcus stared at the water-stained ceiling tiles, turning Edward Richardson's business card over and over between his fingers. The weight of what had happened, what had almost happened, settled over him like a blanket. He had stopped a man from taking his own life today, a powerful man, a man whose decisions had directly contributed to his own misfortune. What would come of tomorrow's meeting? Would Richardson actually follow through, or would the cold light of day erase any sense of obligation he felt toward a homeless man who had witnessed his moment of ultimate vulnerability? Marcus closed his eyes, but sleep remained elusive. Around him, the shelter's nighttime sounds, snoring, coughing, the occasional muffled sob created a familiar lullaby of shared hardship. Across town, in a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming residential tower, Edward Richardson sat in his home office, a tumbler of untouched scotch on the desk before him. The events of the afternoon played on an endless loop in his mind: the lead, the wind, the vertigo, the stranger's voice cutting through his despair, and Olivia, his daughter, who he'd been certain wanted nothing to do with him, had come running when she thought she might lose him forever. She was asleep now in the guest room, her childhood bedroom having been converted to a home gym years ago. Another decision that seemed unfathomably callous in retrospect. She had insisted on staying the night, afraid to leave him alone despite his assurances. Edward's computer screen glowed with dozens of open tabs, information about the Morrison Street property, about homelessness in the city, about the West Side shelter. The more he read, the more his shame deepened. A soft knock at the door interrupted his spiral of self-recrimination. "Dad?" Olivia stood in the doorway, wearing an old Harvard t-shirt he'd forgotten she had left behind. "I couldn't sleep." "Neither could I," Edward admitted, gesturing to the chair across from him. Olivia sat, tucking her feet beneath her like she used to do as a little girl. For a moment neither spoke, the weight of years of estrangement hanging between them. "I thought I'd lost you today," she finally said, her voice small. "When I got your text, I just knew something was wrong." Edward's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, Olivia. Not just for today, but for ... single quotes," he gestured vaguely, encompassing everything: the missed birthdays, the abbreviated holiday visits, graduations where he'd arrived late and left early, always pulled away by some supposedly urgent business matter. "Why?" she asked, the question encompassing far more than the day's event. "Why was it all so much more important than us, than Mom, than me?" Edward leaned back, the leather of his chair creaking in the silence. How could he explain the inexplicable? The addiction to achievement, the fear of failure, the way each success only heightened the pressure to reach for more. "I told myself it was for you," he said finally, "that I was building a legacy, creating security. But the truth is I was running from failure, from inadequacy, from myself." He looked up, meeting his daughter's gaze directly. "It was never about you not being enough. It was about me not knowing how to be enough without ... all of this." He gestured to the opulent office, the awards on the walls, the skyline view. Olivia wiped away a tear. "That man today. He had nothing, and yet he seemed to have everything that matters." Edward nodded slowly. "Marcus. His name is Marcus Reeves. Are you really going to help him, or was that just something you said in the moment?" The question stung, but Edward couldn't deny he deserved the skepticism. How many promises had he made and broken over the years? "I'm going to try," he said, "starting tomorrow. And not just him, all the families affected by the Morrison development." He hesitated. "I'd like you to be part of it, if you want to be." Olivia studied him, searching for sincerity in his expression. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded once, decisively. "I'll clear my schedule." Dawn broke over the city in a wash of pale gold. Marcus woke early, as he always did in the shelter. Privacy and quiet moments were precious commodities in communal living. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Lily, and made his way to the small bathroom area to wash up. The mirror above the industrial sink reflected a face he sometimes hardly recognized anymore. Fatigue had carved lines around his eyes and mouth, and his once short hair now hung past his ears, streaked with premature gray. But his eyes... His mother always said you could read a person's character in their eyes. His still held the same determination they always had, despite everything. "Big day?" Elena asked, finding him staring at his reflection. Marcus nodded. "Job interview, maybe." She smiled. "I'll make sure Lily gets to school if you're not back." "Thanks," he said, grateful yet again for the makeshift community that had formed among the shelter's residents and volunteers. An hour later, freshly shaven and wearing his least worn clothes, jeans without visible holes, a button-up shirt salvaged from his previous life, Marcus stood outside the gleaming headquarters of Richardson Development Group. The building soared upward, all glass and steel, a monument to wealth and power. For a moment he considered walking away. What was he doing here? What did he expect to come from this meeting? The business card in his pocket suddenly felt as heavy as a brick. But he thought of Lily, of the promise in her eyes when he'd left her that morning. "Are we gonna have our own place again, Daddy?" The hope in her voice had been both beautiful and heartbreaking. Marcus squared his shoulders and pushed through the revolving doors into the marble-floored lobby. The security guard at the front desk eyed him suspiciously. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Mr. Richardson," Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I have an appointment." The guard's eyebrows rose slightly, but he checked his computer. "Your name, sir?" "Marcus Reeves." To Marcus's surprise, the guard's demeanor changed immediately. "Yes, Mr. Reeves. You're expected." He gestured to the bank of elevators. "Executive floor. Someone will meet you there." The elevator whisked him upward, his stomach lurching from both the rapid ascent and nerves. When the doors opened, he half expected to be met by security and escorted out. Instead, Olivia Richardson stood waiting, wearing a tailored pantsuit and a tentative smile. "Mr. Reeves," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." Marcus shook her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. "Your father, he's here?" "Waiting for us in the conference room," she nodded, gesturing for him to follow. "Along with some other people I think you should meet." They walked down a hallway lined with photos of Richardson Development's gleaming office towers, luxury condominiums, exclusive resorts, monuments to wealth that had seemed so far removed from Marcus's world until the day that world came crashing down around him. Olivia paused outside a frosted glass door. "Before we go in, I wanted to thank you again. What you did yesterday, ... single quote," she trailed off, emotion briefly overtaking her professional composure. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly, "they wouldn't have. Especially not someone with every reason to hate my father." She studied him with undisguised curiosity. "Why did you do it? Really?" Marcus considered the question. The easy answer was Lily. Everything he did was for her. but there was more to it than that. Because when I was standing on my own ledge 3 years ago, someone talked me down. He said simply, a stranger. He told me that as long as I was breathing, I had the chance to make tomorrow better than today. I've been trying to live by that ever since, even when it feels impossible. Olivia nodded slowly, as if absorbing a profound truth. Then, squaring her shoulders, she pushed open the door. Inside, Edward Richardson stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by men and women in expensive suits. He looked up as they entered, his face betraying a flash of relief. Marcus, he said, stepping forward to shake his hand. Thank you for coming. We have a lot to discuss. The conference room fell silent as Marcus took a seat at the massive table. The sleek surface reflected his uneasy expression back at him, a man clearly out of place among the power suits and polished appearances. Edward remained standing, commanding the room with the natural authority of someone who had spent decades at the helm of a corporate empire. I'd like to introduce Marcus Reeves, Edward began, his voice steady despite the dark circles under his eyes that hinted at a sleepless night. Mr. Reeves and I met yesterday under unusual circumstances. He helped me gain some much-needed perspective. The executives exchanged curious glances. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, aware of their scrutiny but determined not to be intimidated. What most of you don't know, Edward continued, is that Mr. Reeves is one of 43 heads of household displaced by our Morrison Street development. He and his 7-year-old daughter are currently residing at the West Side shelter. A woman in a charcoal suit near the end of the table consulted her tablet. Morrison Street? That was the affordable housing complex we demolished last month for the Gateway Luxury Residences project. Correct, Janet, Edward nodded. A project that, as of this morning, I am officially suspending. The room erupted in objection. We've already invested millions. The shareholders will revolt. The permits alone cost. Edward raised a hand, silencing the protests with the ease of someone accustomed to unquestioning obedience. I'm not canceling the project. I'm reimagining. He nodded to Olivia, who distributed folders to everyone at the table. Inside, you'll find preliminary plans for what I'm calling the Morrison Edward explained as the executives leafed through the documents. Mixed income housing with at least 43 units specifically reserved for the families we displaced, offered at their previous rent rates, guaranteed for 10 years. Marcus stared at the architectural rendering, scarcely able to believe what he was hearing. Dad, this is ... single quotes, Olivia began, clearly seeing the plans for the first time herself. Necessary, Edward finished for her, and long overdue. He turned to a balding man at the far end of the table. Jim, you'll handle the legal aspects. I want binding agreements drawn up by the end of the week, including rental guarantees and potential pathways to ownership for the displaced residents. The lawyer nodded, scribbling notes. Victoria, Edward addressed a woman with a severe bob haircut, will need to revise the budget, redirect funds from the penthouse finishes and the rooftop infinity pool. The basics remain safe, dignified housing for all residents. Victoria's mouth tightened into a thin line, but she nodded curtly. Marcus found his voice at last. Mr. Richardson, this is ... unexpected. Edward, please, the billionaire corrected him. It's the very least I can do. Which brings me to the second reason I asked you here today. He paused, closing his portfolio. I'd like to offer you a job. Marcus blinked. A job? As community liaison for the Morrison project? You know these families, their needs, their concerns. You'd be their voice in the planning process, ensuring we're not just building housing, but rebuilding a community. The executives exchanged glances, but no one dared object. I don't have any experience in construction or real estate, Marcus pointed out. Edward waved away the concern. You have something more valuable, lived experience and integrity. The position comes with a salary of $85,000 per year, full benefits, and immediate access to one of our corporate apartments until the Morrison community is complete. Marcus felt the room tilt slightly. The sum was nearly double what he'd made as a high school history teacher before the school district's budget cuts had eliminated his position. This is very generous, but it feels ... single quotes. Marcus struggled to find the right words. Like charity? Edward supplied. It's not. It's an investment in the project, in the community, and in the kind of company I want Richardson Development to become. He glanced at his daughter, something unspoken passing between them. Olivia will be overseeing the project as a whole. You'd report directly to her. Olivia offered Marcus a small, encouraging smile. We need your perspective, Mr. Reeves. Without it, we're just guessing at what these families truly need. Marcus looked from father to daughter, then around at the faces of the executives, some curious, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. What they were proposing was extraordinary, perhaps even revolutionary in the cutthroat world of urban development. But could he trust it? Trust them? I'd need time to think about it, he said finally, and to discuss it with my daughter. Edward nodded. Of course, take the day, but I hope you'll accept. We're breaking ground on a new direction here. I'd like you to be part of it. The meeting concluded shortly after, the executives filing out with muttered conversations about budgets and timelines. Marcus remained seated, still processing everything he'd heard. I know it's a lot to take in, Olivia said, gathering her papers. But he means it. I've never seen him like this before. People don't change overnight, Marcus replied quietly. No, she agreed. But sometimes they reach a breaking point. Yesterday on that ledge, she broke off, composing herself. He wasn't just contemplating ending his life. He was acknowledging that the life he'd built wasn't worth living anymore. Marcus considered her words. And you? Where do you fit in all this? A complex emotion flickered across Olivia's face. I've spent years trying to get my father's attention, mostly by fighting against everything he stood for. I run a non-profit focused on affordable housing advocacy. Marcus couldn't help the surprised laugh that escaped him. Seriously? The daughter of Edward Richardson, champion of the unhoused? Olivia's smile was tinged with sadness. Ironic, isn't it? I think that's partly why he shut me out. Every time he looked at me, I was a walking reminder of his moral compromises. She shrugged. Now maybe we can actually work together instead of at cross purposes. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text. His stomach dropped as he read the message from Elena at the shelter. Lily's sick. School sent her back. Fever. Nothing serious, but asking for you. I need to go, he said, standing abruptly. My daughter, of course, Olivia nodded. Let me call you a car. That's not necessary, Marcus began, but Olivia was already on her phone. It's the least we can do, she insisted, and it will be faster than public transportation. 10 minutes later, a sleek black sedan was whisking Marcus through the city toward the West Side shelter. As skyscrapers gave way to progressively shabbier neighborhoods, Marcus stared out the window, his mind racing with the morning's revelations. Could he trust Edward Richardson's apparent change of heart? Was the job offer legitimate or merely a salve for a guilty conscience? And what about the apartment? Would accepting it make him complicit in the very system that had rendered him homeless in the first place? The car pulled up outside the shelter, a dreary concrete building with barred windows and a small sign announcing its purpose. The contrast between this place and the gleaming Richardson Development headquarters couldn't have been starker. Thank you, Marcus told the driver, then hurried inside. The shelter's daytime quiet was broken only by the occasional cough or murmured conversation. Marcus found Lily curled up on their cot, her face flushed with fever, Elena sitting beside her with a cool cloth on the child's forehead. "Daddy!" Lily croaked, reaching for him. Marcus gathered her into his arms, pressing his lips to her warm forehead. "Hey, sweet pea, not feeling so good, huh?" She shook her head, burying her face against his chest. "My throat hurts, and my head feels funny. Probably just a cold," Elena offered, reassuring. "But she's been asking for you." "Thank you for watching her," Marcus said sincerely. As Elena moved away to give them privacy, he rocked Lily gently, thinking of the corporate apartment Edward had offered. A place with real beds, private bathrooms, a kitchen where he could make Lily soup and tea instead of relying on shelter provisions. "Daddy," Lily mumbled against his shirt, "did you get the job? Are we going home?" The question pierced his heart. "Not today, sweet pea, but maybe soon. I don't like it here," she whispered, a rare admission that cut him to the quick. Lily had been incredibly resilient through their ordeal, rarely complaining, making the best of their cramped, noisy circumstances. "The bathrooms smell funny." And Marissa took my hairbrush again. Marcus stroked her hair, thinking of Edward Richardson standing on that ledge, of Olivia's tear-stained face as she watched her father teetering on the brink of the opportunity now being extended to him. To them. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Olivia. How is Lily? I've taken the liberty of sending over some children's cold medicine and soup. The security desk should have it for you." Before he could respond, another text arrived. "The corporate apartment is available immediately. No obligation to accept the job. Consider it restitution, not charity." Marcus stared at the messages, something shifting within it. Perhaps this wasn't about trust or even about second chances. Perhaps it was simply about recognizing an outstretched hand when it was offered, just as Edward had recognized his on that rooftop. "Lily," he said softly, "how would you feel about moving into a new place, just temporarily while you get better?" Her fever-bright eyes widened. "A real place? With our own bathroom?" "With our own bathroom," he confirmed, "and a kitchen. And real beds. Today?" The hope in her voice was almost unbearable. Marcus took a deep breath. "Let me make a call." When Olivia's phone rang, she answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting for the call. "Marcus, we'll take the apartment," he said without preamble. "Lily's sick, and she needs ... single quotes his voice caught. She needs stability, a safe place to recover." "I understand," Olivia replied. "I'll have everything arranged within the hour." "And the job offer?" Marcus hesitated. "I'm still thinking about that part, but I'm willing to listen." "That's all we're asking," Olivia said, relief evident in her voice. "Oh, and Marcus, thank you for everything." As he hung up, Marcus wasn't sure if he was making the right decision or simply the necessary one, but looking down at Lily's feverish face, he knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the greatest act of courage wasn't saving someone else, but allowing yourself to be saved. The corporate apartment was located on the 22nd floor of a gleaming residential tower in the city's revitalized downtown district. As the elevator ascended, Lily leaned against Marcus, her small body radiating fever heat through her thin jacket. He kept one arm around her shoulders and the other on their single duffel bag containing everything they still owned in the world. When the doors opened, Olivia was waiting for them, keycard in hand. "I hope you don't mind that I'm here," she said, noting Marcus's surprised expression. "I wanted to make sure everything was ready." She looked down at Lily with concern, and to see how the little patient is doing. Lily regarded Olivia with the open curiosity of childhood despite her illness. "Are you the princess Daddy told me about? From the tower?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Lily, this is Miss Richardson. She works with her father, who owns this building. Please call me Olivia, she insisted, smiling at Lily. And I'm definitely not a princess, though I'm trying to help your dad. Should we go inside? She led them to apartment 2210, swiping the keycard and pushing the door open. Marcus had prepared himself for something nice, certainly better than the shelter. What he hadn't prepared for was luxury. The apartment opened into a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sleek, modern furniture, artwork on the walls, a kitchen with gleaming appliances, and a dining area that could comfortably seat 6. Down a short hallway, he glimpsed 2 bedrooms and what appeared to be 2 bathrooms. This is ... single, quotes Marcus struggled for words. Standard corporate housing for visiting executives, Olivia explained, misinterpreting his hesitation. Nothing special by Richardson's standards, but comfortable. Lily had no such restraint. Daddy, it's like a palace, she whispered, then immediately launched into a coughing fit. Let's get you settled, Marcus said, guiding her toward what appeared to be the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. To his surprise, it had already been prepared with children's bedding in cheerful yellow and a small basket of books on the nightstand. I took the liberty, Olivia explained, hovering in the doorway. The medicine and soup I mentioned are in the kitchen. There's also a fully stocked refrigerator and pantry, clean towels in both bathrooms, and some basic toiletries. Marcus helped Lily into the bed, trying to process the surreal turn their lives had taken in the span of 24 hours. Yesterday, they'd been sharing a cot in a crowded shelter. Today, they were in a luxury apartment that probably cost more per month than he used to make in a year. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion as he pulled the covers over his daughter. For all of this, Olivia nodded, her expression softening. I'll let you get her settled. The kitchen has everything you need to prepare the soup. If you need anything else, my number's on the refrigerator. She hesitated. I'd like to check in tomorrow if that's okay. Dad is hoping you might be willing to meet with him again. Marcus looked down at Lily, already drifting off in the comfort of a real bed. Tomorrow afternoon, maybe? Depending on how she's feeling. Single quotes after Olivia left. Marcus stood in the center of the living room, momentarily paralyzed by the abrupt change in circumstances. The silence was the first thing he noticed. No snoring neighbors. No crying babies, no shelter announcements over ancient PA systems, just the faint hum of the heating system and the distant muted sounds of the city below. He wandered the apartment, opening drawers and cabinets, still half expecting to find it was all an elaborate prank. The refrigerator was indeed stocked, not just with basics, but with fresh fruits, vegetables, quality meats, and even a carton of chocolate ice cream that he suspected was specifically for Lily. In the master bathroom, he found himself staring at his reflection in the expansive mirror. The harsh fluorescent lighting of the shelter had been mercifully replaced by softer illumination that somehow made him look less haggard, less worn. He turned on the shower, adjusting the temperature to scalding, and stood under the water until his skin was pink and his muscles began to relax for what felt like the first time in months. Later, after checking on a sleeping Lily and making himself a sandwich that contained more vegetables than he'd seen in weeks, Marcus sat at the dining table with Edward Richardson's business card and Olivia's contact information spread before him. The job offer hung in his mind, tantalizing and terrifying in equal measure. Community liaison, a voice for people like him, who had been rendered invisible by the very machine that was now offering him a way back into visibility. Was it a genuine opportunity, or would he become a token? A public relations gesture to improve Richardson Development's image. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Hope you're settling in. Dad asked me to send you this. Attached was a document, the official job description for the position Edward had offered him. As Marcus read through it, his skepticism began to waver. The role had real responsibilities, measurable outcomes, and explicit authority to advocate for community needs in the planning process. A second text arrived. No pressure, just wanted you to have all the information. Marcus set the phone down, a war of emotions raging within him. Pride urged him to decline, to find his own way back, to not be beholden to the very people who had contributed to his downfall. But pragmatism reminded him that opportunities like this didn't come along every day, especially for someone in his position. And then there was Lily, her fever, her need for stability, for a home. The decision crystallized with unexpected clarity. He would accept the job not out of gratitude or obligation, but because it offered him the chance to ensure that what had happened to his community wouldn't happen to others. He would be a voice, an advocate, a reminder that behind every development decision were real human lives. He texted Olivia back, I'll take the job, but I have conditions. When can we meet? Response came almost immediately. Name the time. I'll be there. Morning sunlight streamed through windows without bars or grime, painting golden rectangles across the floor of the apartment. Marcus sat at the kitchen counter, nursing his second cup of real coffee, when Lily emerged from her bedroom, hair tousled from sleep. Daddy? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Is this real? Do we live here now? For a little while, he answered carefully. How are you feeling? She considered the question with the solemnity only a 7-year-old could muster. My throat's still scratchy, but I'm hungry. It's a good sign, Marcus smiled, moving to the refrigerator. How about some eggs? And there's orange juice. Lily climbed onto one of the high stools at the counter, taking in the apartment with wide eyes. It's so quiet and big. It is that, Marcus agreed, cracking eggs into a bowl. Are we gonna see the princess again? And the king from the tower? Marcus nearly dropped the whisk. They're not royalty, Lily. Miss Olivia and her father, Mr. Richardson, they're just people. Wealthy people who own a lot of buildings, but still just people. But they gave us a castle, Lily insisted, gesturing around the apartment. Marcus set the bowl down, coming around the counter to kneel in front of his daughter. Sweet pea, this isn't our castle. It's temporary, like a really nice hotel. And I'm going to be working for Miss Richardson, helping to build homes for our friends from Morrison Street. Lily's brow furrowed. Like Ms. Elena and Marissa and her mom? And Miss Carlos with the guitar? Exactly like them, Marcus nodded. That's why I took the job, to help make sure everyone gets a good home, not just us. Lily considered this. That's a good job, Daddy. I hope so, he replied, returning to the eggs. Miss Olivia is coming over this afternoon to talk about it. Can I wear my good dress? Lily asked, perking up. The blue one Grandma gave me? The blue dress that Marcus had carefully preserved through their evictions, their time in a motel, and finally the shelter. The dress that represented a life they had lost but hadn't forgotten. Of course you can, he said, his throat tight. And maybe after Miss Olivia leaves, if you're feeling better, we can go shopping for some new clothes. Lily's eyes widened. New clothes? Really? The doorbell rang before he could answer. Frowning, Marcus checked the time, barely 9 a.m., hours before Olivia was supposed to arrive. He opened the door to find a courier holding a large package. Delivery for Marcus and Lily Reeves, the man said, consulting his tablet. Puzzled, Marcus signed for the package and brought it inside. The sender information simply read, "Oh, Richardson. What is it?" Lily asked, hopping down from her stool. "I'm not sure," Marcus answered, opening the box. Inside was an assortment of children's clothing, not used or discount items, but high-quality pieces in Lily's size. At the bottom was a small tablet computer with a note attached, for Lily's schoolwork while she recovers. Educational apps preloaded. "Oh," Lily squealed with delight, pulling out a purple sweater and holding it against herself. "Daddy, look, it's so soft." Marcus stared at the contents of the box, a complex mixture of gratitude and discomfort washing over him. The gesture was thoughtful, practical, addressing immediate needs without being asked, but it also highlighted the vast gulf between their worlds and how easily Olivia could solve problems that had seemed insurmountable to him just days ago. His phone buzzed with a text. Hope the delivery arrived. Not meant to overstep, just thought Lily might need some comfortable things while she recovers. See you at 2. Marcus texted back a simple thank you, then turned his attention back to his daughter, who was already sorting the clothes into careful piles. "Daddy," she asked without looking up, "is Miss Olivia going to be my new friend?" The innocent question carried implications that Marcus wasn't prepared to address. "She seems nice," he said neutrally, "but she's very busy with her job." "She's not too busy for us," Lily pointed out with a child's unerring logic. "She brought us clothes and soup and medicine out of the mouths of babes." Marcus thought. In the simplicity of a child's perspective, the truth was often laid bare. Whatever Olivia Richardson's motivations, guilt, compassion, or something else entirely, she had indeed made time for them when they needed it most. "You're right," he admitted. "She's not too busy for us." Olivia arrived at precisely 2 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio and a small paper bag emblazoned with the logo of an upscale bakery. She had exchanged her formal business attire for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, still unmistakably expensive, but a deliberate step down from corporate armor. Lily, wearing her new purple sweater and freshly washed hair tied back with a ribbon they'd found in the box of clothes, answered the door with Marcus close behind. "Hello, Miss Olivia," she said with the careful formality of a child on best behavior. "Thank you for my new clothes. They're very pretty." "You're very welcome," Olivia smiled. "I'm glad you like them. And you can just call me Olivia." She held up the paper bag. "I brought some cookies from my favorite bakery. I thought they might help a sore throat feel better." Lily's eyes lit up and she looked to Marcus for permission. After lunch, he promised, stepping aside to let Olivia enter, which you still need to finish. While Lily returned to her half-eaten sandwich at the kitchen counter, Marcus led Olivia to the dining table. She settled into a chair and opened her portfolio. "Before we start," Marcus said, his voice low enough that Lily wouldn't overhear, "I want to thank you for the clothes and the tablet, but in the future, I'd appreciate if you'd check with me first." Olivia looked momentarily taken aback, then nodded. "You're right, I apologize. I should have asked." "I understand the impulse to help," Marcus continued, "but I'm still her father. Even when we were in the shelter, I made sure she had what she needed. Maybe not new or fancy, but ... single quotes, he trailed off, unsure how to explain without sounding ungrateful. "But you're the parent and I overstepped," Olivia finished for him. "I get it. It won't happen again." The simple acknowledgement without defensiveness or justification surprised him. "Thank you," he said, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Now about this job." Olivia opened a folder containing the same job description she'd sent him. "Dad's giving you a lot of latitude here. The position reports directly to me, but you'd have considerable autonomy. We want you to be the voice of the community, not a rubber stamp for Richardson Development." "That's what I want to talk about," Marcus said, leaning forward. "If I take this job, I need 3 guarantees." Olivia looked up, pen poised over her notepad. "I'm listening." "First, I need access to all the original residents of Morrison Street. Contact information, current locations if known, everything. I want to personally speak with each family about returning." Olivia made it doable. "Our property management division should have most records." "Second, Marcus continued. I need real authority in the planning process. Not just consultation, but veto power over any design elements that don't serve the community's needs. This gave Olivia pause. That's ... significant. Construction planning usually falls under multiple departments. Giving veto power to a single position would be unprecedented. Then make it precedented, Marcus countered. Otherwise, I'm just window dressing. I'll have to discuss this with Dad and the project leads, Olivia said, making another note. But I think we can structure something workable. What's your third condition? I want a scholarship fund established for the children of Morrison Street, Marcus said. Post-secondary education or vocational training, fully funded. If Richardson Development is really committed to rebuilding this community, then invest in its future. Olivia stared at him, something like admiration flickering in her expression. You're not asking for anything for yourself. Marcus shrugged. The salary is more than fair. The apartment is temporary. But those kids, they need more than just a roof over their heads. They need hope, opportunity. Like Lily, Olivia observed softly, glancing at the little girl who was now carefully arranging her crusts into a star pattern on her plate. Like Lily, Marcus agreed, and like the dozens of other children who lost their sense of security when those bulldozers came through. Olivia was quiet for a moment, then closed her portfolio decisively. I can't authorize all of this on the spot, but I believe Dad will agree. It's like a quote. She hesitated. He's different since that day on the roof, like something broke open inside him. People don't change overnight, Marcus said, repeating his earlier skepticism. No, Olivia acknowledged, but sometimes they start to. Sometimes all it takes is one person really seeing them at their worst moment, and still treating them like they have value. She met his gaze directly. You did that for him. You saw a human being, not just a billionaire. Marcus looked away, uncomfortable with the gratitude in her eyes. Did what anyone would do. We both know that's not true, she replied, but I understand if you'd rather not dwell on it. She reopened her portfolio. Now, assuming we can meet your conditions, when would you like to start? After Lily's back in school, Marcus said. Probably Monday if her fever stays. Perfect. That gives us time to set up your office and access. Olivia made a few more notes, then closed the portfolio again. Actually, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. Marcus raised an eyebrow in question. Dad would like to meet with the Morrison Street families, all of them, to personally apologize and present the new plans. Marcus let out a low whistle. That's ambitious. It's necessary, Olivia said firmly, and he wants to do it sooner rather than later. Before the press gets wind of the project changes. You're worried about how it will look, Marcus realized, that it seems like a publicity stunt. Olivia winced slightly. I won't deny that the optics matter, but it's more than that. Dad genuinely wants to face the people his decisions have hurt. He thinks he needs to, for himself as much as for them. Marcus considered this. It won't be an easy audience. These people lost everything. We know, Olivia nodded. That's why we want you there, as a bridge, someone they trust. They don't trust me yet, Marcus pointed out. I'm the guy who suddenly moved into a corporate apartment while they're still in shelters or doubled up with relatives. Then let's change that, Olivia suggested. What if we hosted the meeting here at this building? We have a community room on the ground floor. We could arrange transportation for everyone, provide childcare, meals. Marcus shook his head. Not here. This is Richardson territory. It needs to be neutral ground somewhere in the community on their terms. Olivia looked surprised, then thoughtful. You're right. What would you suggest? The community center near Westside Shelter, Marcus said after a moment's consideration. Most of the families use their services already. It's accessible by public transportation, and they have space for childcare. Perfect, Olivia agreed, making a note. When? Give me a week, Marcus said. I'll need to talk to people first. Prepare them. This isn't something you can just spring on them. Lily, having finished her lunch, approached the table. Can I have a cookie now, Daddy? Marcus smiled, the serious conversation momentarily set aside. Yes, you can, but only one for now, okay? We don't want to upset your stomach. Olivia opened the bakery bag and held it out to Lily, who peered inside with exaggerated care before selecting a chocolate chip cookie almost as big as her palm. Thank you, she said politely before taking a bite. Her eyes widened. It's still warm. They bake them all day long, Olivia explained. My dad used to take me there on Sundays after church when I was about your age. It was our special time together. Something in her tone caught Marcus's attention, a note of wistfulness, of longing for simpler days. Do you and your dad still go there? Lily asked. A shadow passed over Olivia's face. No, not for a long time. We both got very busy. That's sad, Lily declared with a child's blunt honesty. Daddy and I are never too busy for cookies. Right, Daddy? Marcus chuckled. Right, sweet pea? Maybe, single quotes, Olivia said hesitantly. Maybe we could all go sometime, when you're feeling better. They have the best hot chocolate in the city. The invitation hung in the air, innocent on the surface but carrying undercurrents of something more complex. Marcus felt a familiar wariness rise within him. This wasn't just about cookies and hot chocolate. It was about blurring lines, about creating connections that extended beyond professional boundaries. Maybe, he said noncommittally. We'll see how the project develops. Single quotes. If Olivia was disappointed by his response, she didn't show it. She merely nodded and returned to her notes. I should get these conditions to Dad and the team. I'll call you once I have feedback, probably tomorrow. As she gathered her things to leave, Lily tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Daddy, can I show Olivia my drawing? The one I made this morning? Before Marcus could respond, Lily had darted back to her room, returning moments later with a colorful crayon drawing. She held it out proudly to Olivia. "It's us," Lily explained, "in our new house that you and your daddy are going to build for us. See? That's you, and that's your daddy, and that's me and my daddy, and that's all our friends from the shelter." Olivia accepted the drawing, studying it carefully. In the childish illustration, stick figures of various sizes stood before a large rainbow-colored building. The two tallest figures, presumably Edward and Olivier, were drawn in business attire, while the others wore an assortment of colorful clothing. "This is beautiful, Lily," Olivia said softly. "May I show it to my dad? I think it would help him understand exactly what we're trying to build." Lily beamed with pride. "Yes, and tell him I use my new tablet to look up what real buildings look like. That's why it has so many windows." "I will," Olivia promised, carefully placing the drawing in her portfolio. "This might be the most important blueprint for the whole project." As Olivia left, Marcus found himself watching her interaction with Lily with mixed emotions. The genuine warmth she showed his daughter was disarming, making it harder to maintain the professional distance he had intended. Yet the worlds they inhabited remained vastly different, separated by privilege and experience that couldn't be bridged by cookies and crayon drawing, no matter how much Lily might wish otherwise. The week passed in a flurry of activity. Marcus spent his days reconnecting with the Morrison Street family, listening to their stories, their struggles, their anger. He walked the familiar corridors of the West Side shelter, sat in cramped apartment living rooms where two families now shared space meant for one, stood in convenience store parking lots talking to those who'd been forced to live in their cars. He carried a notebook everywhere, meticulously documenting each family's situation. Jorge and Maria Vasquez living with their 3 children in Maria's sister's one-bedroom apartment. Carlos Mendoza, the guitarist, staying at the men's shelter across town, separated from his teenage son who'd been sent to live with distant relatives. Eleanor Washington, 72 years old, now sleeping on a church cot after 40 years in the same Morrison Street apartment. Each night he returned to the corporate apartment, exhausted but determined. Lily, now recovered from her cold, would greet him with increasingly elaborate drawings of their new home, each version incorporating ideas she'd gleaned from overheard conversations or her own imagination. Olivia called daily for updates. To Marcus's surprise, she had secured approval for all 3 of his conditions within 48 hours of their meeting. Edward Richardson had not only agreed but expanded the scholarship proposal to include a mentorship program connecting Morrison Street youth with professionals in their fields of interest. On the morning of the community meeting, Marcus stood before the bathroom mirror adjusting the tie of a suit Olivia had sent over. "Standard corporate attire for Richardson executives," the note had explained. "No pressure to wear it, but it's there if you want it." He debated whether to wear his own clothes to visibly maintain his connection to the community, but ultimately decided the suit would send a message of its own, that he was entering this negotiation as an equal, not a supplicant. "You look like a principal," Lily commented from the doorway, already dressed in a new outfit she'd selected with careful deliberation. "Is that good or bad?" Marcus asked, smoothing the jacket's lapels. "Good," she decided. "Principles are important. Everyone listens to them." "I hope you're right, sweet pea," Marcus sighed, "because today I really need people to listen." They arrived at the community center an hour early. The large multi-purpose room had been transformed rows of chairs, a podium at the front, tables along one wall laden with coffee, water, and pastries. In a separate room, childcare had been arranged with activities, games, and snacks. Olivia was already there, directing a team of assistants with clipboard efficiency. She wore a simple, non-designer dress, another calculated choice, Marcus realized. She was trying to bridge worlds too, in her own way. "How many confirmations?" Marcus asked, approaching her. 38 families, she replied, checking her tablet. "Out of 43. Not bad." The Pattersons are visiting relatives in Ohio, and Mar Guzman is still in the hospital," Marcus explained. "I'm not sure about the other 3. They might still show," said Hope. "We sent cars to all the addresses you provide." Marcus nodded, then looked around the room with growing nervousness. This wasn't just a meeting. It was the first test of his new role. The community would be watching to see if he was still one of them, or if he'd been co-opted by Richardson money. "Where's your father?" he asked. "Parking lot," Olivia said, glancing at her watch. "He insisted on driving himself. No driver. Said it wouldn't look right." Again, Marcus noted the careful attention to perception, to symbols. Edward Richardson was proving to be a savvier man than he'd initially thought, or perhaps Olivia was guiding him through these nuances. The families began arriving shortly after. Marcus positioned himself near the entrance, greeting each person by name, accepting hugs, handshakes, and in some cases, suspicious glances. Elena from the shelter arrived with a group of residents, raising her eyebrows at Marcus's suit but offering a warm smile. "Looking sharp, Mr. Richardson Jr.," she teased. "Don't start," he groaned. "I'm nervous enough as it is." The room filled quickly, buzzing with conversation, speculation, and undercurrents of anger. These were people who had lost not just housing but community, security, dignity. Their collective pain and resentment created a palpable tension that no amount of coffee and pastries could dispel. At precisely 10 o'clock, Edward Richardson entered the room. He wore a suit that probably cost more than many in the room earned in months, but it was noticeably less ostentatious than his usual attire. No gold watch, no designer tie. Like his daughter, he was making an effort, though whether it would be enough remained to be seen. The conversations died down as he made his way to the front, all eyes following his progress. Marcus moved to the podium, clearing his throat into the microphone. "Good morning," he began. For those who don't know me, my name is Marcus Reeves. I lived in apartment 4B at Morrison Street for 6 years with my daughter Lily. A murmur of recognition rippled through the crowd. Like all of you, we lost our home when Richardson Development began their Gateway project. Like many of you, we ended up at Westside Shelter. He paused, looking out at the faces watching him, friends, neighbors, people who had shared potluck dinners and holiday celebrations in the worn but welcoming hallways of their former home. Last week, something unexpected happened. Marcus continued. I met Edward Richardson under unusual circumstances. During that meeting, I had the opportunity to tell him directly about the impact his company's decisions had on our lives. To my surprise, he listened. Skeptical murmurs now. A few derisive snorts. I know, Marcus acknowledged. I was skeptical too. But Mr. Richardson has proposed changes to the Morrison Street project that I believe are worth hearing. I've agreed to join his team as community liaison to ensure our voices remain central to the process. Before I turn the floor over to him, I want you all to know one thing. I haven't forgotten where I come from. I haven't forgotten who my people are. Every decision I make in this role will be with you, with us in mind. He stepped back, gesturing Edward forward. The billionaire approached the podium slowly, his usual commanding presence tempered by something that looked almost like humility. Thank you, Mr. Reeves, Edward began. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here today to make excuses. I'm here to apologize. He paused, scanning the room, meeting the skeptical gazes directly. My company took your homes. We did it legally with proper permits and procedures, but we did it without consideration for the human cost. We saw property, not people. Buildings, not communities. His voice remained steady, but Marcus noticed his knuckles whitening as he gripped the podium. That was wrong. I was wrong. The room remained silent, wary. Actions speak louder than words, Edward continued. So today I'm here to outline specific actions we're taking to address the harm we've caused. He proceeded to detail the new Morrison Community Plan, the mixed income housing, the guaranteed units for displaced residents at their previous rent rates, the scholarship fund, the mentorship program. As he spoke, slides appeared on the large screen behind him, showing architectural renderings, floor plans, community spaces. Construction will begin next month, Edward concluded. Mr. Reeves will have direct oversight of the project, with full veto power over any elements that don't serve community needs. We aim to have you all back home within 18 months. In the meantime, Richardson Development will provide rental assistance to ensure stable housing during the transition. A hand shot up from the middle of the room. Eleanor Washington, the elderly woman who'd lived at Morrison Street for 4 decades. Yes, ma'am, Edward acknowledged her. Pretty pictures and fancy words, Eleanor said, her voice strong despite her years. But why should we believe you? What's to stop you from changing your mind once the press attention dies down? Edward nodded, accepting the challenge. A fair question. All guarantees will be in legally binding contracts with penalties for non-compliance. Additionally, Richardson Development is establishing a community land trust, transferring ownership of the property to a non-profit entity with a board comprised primarily of Morrison Street residents. My company will build it, but you will own it. A surprised buzz swept through the room. This went beyond what even Marcus had known was planned. Carlos Mendoza stood next. What about those of us who found other housing, who can't wait 18 months? You'll have priority if you wish to return, Edward answered. But if you've established roots elsewhere, the rental guarantee can be applied to your current housing instead. More questions followed, specific, pointed, challenging. Edward answered each one directly, without corporate jargon or evasion. When he didn't know an answer, he said so, deferring to Olivia or promising to follow up. As the formal presentation concluded and the meeting shifted to one-on-one conversations around the room, Marcus found himself cornered by Elena and several other shelter residents. So, Elena said, eyeing him critically, "You're one of them now?" Marcus winced. "I'm trying to be a bridge, to make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to others." "A bridge gets walked on from both directions," Carlos commented, joining the group. "I know the risks," Marcus admitted, "but what was I supposed to do? Turn down the chance to actually fix this?" Eleanor Washington patted his arm. "You did right, boy. Just don't forget where you came from. That fancy suit is nice, but it isn't you." "I won't forget," Marcus promised. "My job is to be your voice in that tower, to remind them that every decision affects real people with real lives." Across the room, Lily had emerged from the children's area and was showing her latest drawing to Olivia, who knelt at eye level to give the artwork her full attention. Edward stood nearby, observing the interaction with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read, something between sadness and hope. The meeting had gone better than expected, but Marcus harbored no illusions about the challenges ahead. Trust, once broken, required more than promises to rebuild. It required consistent, tangible action over time, and he had positioned himself at the fulcrum of that effort, neither fully of the community anymore, nor fully of the Richardson world. A bridge, as Carlos had said, designed to be walked on from both directions. The first day of Marcus's official employment at Richardson Development arrived with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The temporary office assigned to him was on the 42nd floor, not quite executive level, but high enough to offer a sweeping view of the city below, including if he pressed his face to the easternmost window, a distant glimpse of where Morrison Street had once stood. "How do you like it?" Olivia asked from the doorway, watching as he examined the space. "We can change anything that doesn't work for you." The office was tastefully appointed with modern furniture, state-of-the-art technology, and a few carefully selected pieces of abstract art. It looked nothing like the classroom where he'd taught history for 8 years, or the cramped apartment where he'd raised Lily after his wife died. "It's fine," he said, setting his messenger bag, a gift from Elena, and the shelter residesk. "Just need to make it a little more mine." Olivia nodded, understanding. "The design team is waiting in the main conference room whenever you're ready. They're eager to get your input on the community center plan." As Marcus followed her down the corridor, he noticed the curious glances from other employees, some merely interested, others openly skeptical. Word had spread quickly about the new community liaison, the homeless man who had somehow secured a direct line to the CEO. The conference room contained a half-dozen people in expensive casual wear, surrounded by laptops, blueprints, and material samples. They fell silent as Marcus entered, their expressions a mixture of professional courtesy and veiled assessment. "Everyone," Olivia announced. "This is Marcus Reeves, our new Director of Community Engagement. As you know, Marcus will have final approval authority on all elements of the Morrison project design." A slender man with fashionable glasses stood, extending his hand. "Anton Meyer, lead architect. We're very excited about this unique opportunity, Mr. Reeves." "Marcus, please," he replied, shaking the offered hand. "And I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I think we should be clear from the start. This isn't an opportunity, it's a correction. We're fixing something that should never have been broken." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Anton's smile tightened. "Of course, poor choice of words on my part. Let's look at the plans," Olivia interjected smoothly, directing them toward the large touchscreen at the front of the room. For the next 2 hours, Marcus immersed himself in blueprints, 3D renderings, and technical specifications. He asked pointed questions about accessibility, security, shared spaces, and child-friendly design. When the discussion turned to finishes and aesthetics, he reminded them that durability and ease of maintenance were more important than visual appeal. "These residents aren't looking for luxury," he explained. "They want homes they can be proud of, that won't fall apart in 5 years, that they can afford to maintain." "But the project's mixed-income nature requires a certain standard of design," Anton argued. "The market-rate units need to attract tenants who can afford higher rents, which in turn subsidize the affordable units." "I understand the model," Marcus said, "but we can achieve that without marble countertops in every unit. Focus luxury elements on common areas that everyone can enjoy and keep individual units practical." By lunchtime, Marcus had vetoed 3 design elements, approved 2, and requested modifications to several others. The design team looked simultaneously impressed and frustrated by his detailed input. "You know more about architectural design than I would have expected," Anton commented as they gathered their material. "I did my research," Marcus replied simply. What he didn't mention was the nights spent at the corporate apartment after Lily was asleep, hunched over his laptop, studying basic architectural principles, construction standards, and affordable housing best practices. He might not have their degrees or experience, but he wouldn't be dismissed for lack of knowledge. As the team filed out, Olivia lingered behind. "That went well," she observed. "You held your own." "They weren't expecting me to," Marcus noted. "They thought this was a PR exercise." Olivia didn't deny it. "Some of them, yes. That will change as they work." "And your father? Is this still just image rehabilitation for him?" She considered the question carefully. "I don't think so. Not anymore. He's ... single quotes." She hesitated. "He's different, more present, more thoughtful. He called my mother last week. They haven't spoken in years." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Lily's school. He frowned at the message. "I need to go. Lily's having a difficult day. The school counselor thinks she needs to come home." "Is she sick again?" Olivia asked, concern evident in her voice. "Not physically," Marcus replied, already gathering his things. "She had an incident in class. Something about a presentation on families." Understanding dawned on Olivia's face. "Go, family comes first. We can reschedule the afternoon meeting." Marcus hurried out, gratitude for Olivia's understanding mixing with worry for his daughter. As he rode the elevator down, he reflected on how quickly he'd adapted to this new reality, discussing million-dollar design decisions in the morning, rushing to his daughter's side by afternoon, 2 worlds barely overlapping. The school counselor's office was a small, cheerful room decorated with children's artwork and motivational posters. Lily sat in an oversized chair, her legs dangling, eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Daddy," she whispered when she saw him, her voice small and fragile. "Hey, sweet pea," he said gently, kneeling before her. "Rough day?" The counselor, a kind-faced woman named Ms. Patel, offered a sympathetic smile. "Lily's class is working on family tree projects. It brought up some difficulty." Marcus understood immediately. Lily had been only 4 when her mother died, old enough to remember and mourn her, but young enough that the memories were already fading, becoming more concept than concrete recollection. "Can I take her home?" he asked. Ms. Patel nodded. "Of course. I think that would be best. And perhaps you could help her with the project? It's due next Monday." On the ride back to the apartment, Lily remained unusually quiet, staring out the window at the passing city. "Want to talk about it?" Marcus asked gently. "Madison has a mom and a dad and 2 brothers and a sister and 2 grandmas and a grandpa," she said finally, her voice flat. And a dog. That's a big family, Marcus acknowledged. And Tyler has 2 moms and a stepdad and stepsister, Lily continued. And Emma has a mom in heaven like me, but she has a new mom now too because her daddy got married again. Marcus waited, sensing there was more. Everyone has more people than me, Lily concluded, a tear slipping down her cheek. My tree is going to be the smallest one. Marcus felt his heart contract. Small trees can be mighty, Lily. They can grow tall and strong even without a lot of branches. But I want more branches, she whispered. I want a bigger family. He had no answer for that, no way to replace what she had lost, what circumstances had taken from them both. The elevator ride to their apartment passed in weighted silence. As they entered, Lily went straight to her room, an unusual behavior that underscored her distress. Marcus stood in the kitchen, uncertain how to proceed, when his phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. Everything okay with Lily? Dad's asking if there's anything we can do to help. Marcus stared at the text, a complex mix of emotions washing over him. The offer was well-intentioned, but it highlighted the strange new dynamic of their lives. Billionaires concerned with his daughter's well-being, inserted into their most private family moments. He was about to decline when an idea struck him. He texted back, actually, there might be something. Lily's working on a family tree project for school, and it's brought up some feelings about our small family. Would your father happen to have any resources on different types of family? Books or websites that show non-traditional family structures in a positive way? Olivia's response came quickly. Absolutely. I'll pull some materials together. Would it be all right if I bring them by this evening? No pressure if today isn't good. Marcus hesitated, his protective instincts warring with the knowledge that Lily had formed a genuine attachment to Olivia. Perhaps seeing a friendly face would help lift her spirits. That would be fine, he replied. Around 6? Perfect. And Marcus? Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them. The message lingered on his screen long after he'd set the phone down. He thought about the Morrison Street community, not relative. But people who had become family through shared experiences and mutual support. People like Elena, who had watched Lily when he needed to look for work. Like Carlos, who had taught Lily her first guitar chords. Like Eleanor, who had knitted Lily a scarf each winter. Family was indeed about who showed up. And for reasons Marcus still couldn't fully comprehend, Edward and Olivia Richardson had shown up when he and Lily needed someone most. He found Lily in her room, listlessly paging through a picture book. Hey, he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. Olivia's going to come by this evening with some things that might help with your project. Would that be okay? Lily's eyes brightened slightly. Olivia's coming here? To see me? To help with your family tree? Marcus clarified, not wanting to build expectations. Can we put Olivia on my tree? Lily asked, a hint of her usual enthusiasm returning. She's not really family, but she acts like it sometimes, like when she brings cookies or helps me with my tablet. The innocent question crystallized Marcus's unease. Lines were blurring, boundaries shifting. In Lily's young mind, the Richardsons were becoming something more than temporary helpers or as employers. They were becoming people who mattered, people who might leave another void if they disappeared. Let's see what she brings, he said, deflecting the question. Maybe there's a way to include special friends on your tree, as Lily nodded and returned to her book with renewed interest. Marcus wondered if he was doing the right thing, allowing these connections to form when the future remained so uncertain. The Morrison project would take months, years even, but what happened after? When the buildings were complete, the families resettled, the publicity value exhausted, would the Richardsons still show up? At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Marcus opened the door to find not only Olivia but Edward as well, both carrying canvas tote bags filled with books and art supplies. I hope it's all right that Dad came along, Olivia said, noting Marcus's surprised expression. He had some ideas for the project. Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside to let them in. Lily will be excited to see you both. Edward seemed oddly tentative in the apartment, as if uncertain of his welcome. He set his bag on the dining table and looked around with careful, neutral interest. Lily? Marcus called. We have visitors. Lily emerged from her room, her earlier sadness momentarily forgotten when she spotted their guests. Mr. Edward, she exclaimed, her face lighting up. You came to help with my tree too? Edward's formal demeanor softened. I brought some special materials, he said, reaching into his bag. When Olivia told me about your project, I thought you might like these. He produced several sheets of beautifully crafted paper in varying shades of green and brown, along with art supplies Marcus recognized as professional grade. These are artist papers, Edward explained, kneeling to Lily's level despite his expensive suit. They're made from different plants from around the world. I thought maybe your family tree could be a real artwork, not just a school project. Single quotes. Lily approached the table with reverent curiosity, touching the papers with gentle fingers. They're so pretty, she breathed. I also brought some books, Olivia added, unpacking her bag. Books about all different kinds of families. Some big, some small, some traditional, some not so traditional. Marcus watched as Lily eagerly examined the books. Edward and Olivia sitting on either side of her at the table. There was something surreal about the scene, a billionaire developer and his Harvard-educated daughter, sitting in his temporary apartment, helping his 7-year-old with her homework. Life had taken some truly unexpected turns. I'll make coffee, he said, needing a moment to process the situation. From the kitchen, he observed them. Edward was showing Lily how different papers could be layered to create dimension, while Olivia gently guided her through one of the books, stopping at illustrations that showed single-parent households like theirs. See? Olivia was saying, this little boy just has a dad too, and look how happy they are together. Sometimes small families can be the strongest because they have more love per person. Lily considered this thoughtfully. But don't you get lonely? The innocent question hung in the air. Marcus froze in the kitchen, coffee forgotten. Sometimes, Olivia admitted, I live alone in a big apartment and sometimes it feels too quiet. What about you, Mr. Edward? Lily asked. Do you get lonely in your castle? Edward seemed taken aback by the direct question. He glanced at Marcus, then back at Lily. Yes, he said simply. I do. For a long time, I pretended I didn't. I filled my life with work and meetings and buildings. But that didn't really help. Marcus brought the coffee to the table. The domestic normalcy of the gesture at odds with the unexpectedly intimate conversation. Is that why you were on the ledge? Lily asked innocently. Because you were lonely? The room went still. Marcus nearly dropped the mugs while Olivia's eyes widened in alarm. Lily, Marcus said quickly. That's not— It's all right, Edward interrupted, his voice steady but soft. She deserves honesty. He turned to Lily. Yes, that was part of it. I was lonely and I was sad and I felt like I'd made too many mistakes to fix. But then your dad helped me see things differently. Lily nodded, accepting this with a child's straightforward processing. My dad's good at help. He says sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. She returned her attention to the papers, seemingly satisfied with the explanation. Can I make my tree big even if our family is small? Absolutely, Edward assured her. The biggest trees often grow from single seeds. As they worked together on the project, a strange kind of ease developed. Lily chattered about school and her friend. Olivia shared stories from her own childhood, and even Edward occasionally offered a quiet anecdote or suggestion. Marcus found himself both participating and observing, still uneasy about the blurring boundaries, but unable to deny the positive effect on Lily's mood. After an hour of crafting, they had created a three-dimensional tree with Lily's photographs and drawings of her parents attached to the branches. For relatives she'd never met, grandparents long deceased, distant cousins in other states, they used symbolic decoration, stars for those who had passed on, small envelopes for those they only connected with through occasional letters or cards. What about the people who aren't family but are important? Lily asked, holding up a photo of Elena from the shelter. Where do they go? Olivia considered this. What if we had a garden around the tree? Trees need community too, flowers and birds and other plants. Lily's face lit up. Yes, and we can put Elena and Carlos and Miss Patel from school and and Olivia and MR. Edward? Marcus suggested gently, acknowledging what Lily had been working toward. Lily nodded enthusiastically. Can I take your pictures? I think we can do better than that, Edward said, pulling out his phone. Olivia, Marcus, shall we take a proper photo for Lily's garden? Before Marcus could object, they were arranged on the couch, Lily insisting on sitting between Edward and Marcus, with Olivia perched on the armrest. Edward held out his phone at arm's length, capturing the four of them in a single frame, an unlikely grouping that somehow didn't look as awkward as it should have. As the evening drew to a close, Lily proudly displayed her nearly completed project on the dining table. It's the best family tree ever, she declared. Even if it's small, it has the biggest garden. It's beautiful, Lily, Olivia said sincerely. Your teacher will be impressed. Daddy, can Olivia and Mr. Edward stay for dinner? Lily asked, clearly reluctant for the evening to end. We could order pizza. Marcus hesitated, feeling the familiar tug between maintaining boundaries and allowing Lily the connections she so clearly craved. They probably have other plans, sweet pea. Actually, Edward said carefully, we don't, but we understand if you'd prefer a quiet evening. The unspoken question hung between, were they colleagues working on a project together, or were they becoming something more? Friends? Extended family of a sort? Pizza sounds great, Marcus found himself saying, surprising even himself. As long as you're okay with a 7-year-old choosing the topping. As long as it's not pineapple, Edward declared with mock seriousness. Pineapple is the best, Lily countered, giggling. Oh no, Olivia laughed. I'm with Dad on this one. Fruit doesn't belong on pizza. Technically, Marcus pointed out. Tomatoes are fruit. Don't you start with your teacher facts, Olivia warned playfully. The easy banter continued through dinner, the four of them squeezed around the small table, paper plates and pizza boxes creating an informal atmosphere that seemed to put everyone at ease. Edward in particular appeared more relaxed than Marcus had ever seen him, his corporate persona temporarily set aside. As they were finishing their meal, Edward's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression shifting subtly back toward his more familiar, serious demeanor. I'm afraid we need to go, he said, rising from the table. There's a situation at one of our developments in Chicago that requires my attention. Of course, Marcus nodded, standing as well. Thank you both for coming. You've made a difficult day much easier. Can we do this again? Lily asked, looking from Edward to Olivia with hopeful eyes. Maybe you could come see my tree when it's at school. Marcus started to intervene, concerned about setting expectations, but Olivia spoke first. We'd love to see it, she said warmly. Maybe we can all go to your presentation together. Edward nodded in agreement. I'll make sure my schedule is clear. After they had gone, Marcus helped Lily prepare for bed. Her earlier sadness completely dissipated. As he tucked her in, she looked up at him with serious eyes. Daddy, are Olivia and Mr. Edward our new friends? Marcus considered the question carefully. I think they might be. Yes, good, Lily said decisively. Emmer Edward needs friends. He gets sad sometimes like you used to. The simple observation took Marcus by surprise. What do you mean, like I used to? Lily yawned, already drifting towards sleep. After Mommy went to heaven. You were sad for a long time, but you're happier now. I can tell. Marcus sat with her words long after she had fallen asleep. Was it true? Had he been happier lately? The past months had been a nightmare of instability and worry, yet somehow in the midst of it all something had shifted. Perhaps it was having purpose again, not just survival but meaningful work. Or perhaps it was watching Lily bloom despite their circumstances, her resilience a constant reminder of what truly mattered. Or perhaps he admitted to himself reluctantly, it was the unexpected connections they had formed, the reminder that they weren't alone in the world after all. The Morrison community groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for a crisp autumn morning exactly 1 month after the community meeting. In the weeks leading up to it, Marcus had thrown himself into his work with an intensity that surprised even him. He'd negotiated with contractors to prioritize hiring local workers, especially those from the displaced families. He'd revised architectural plans to include more community spaces based on resident feedback. He'd spent countless hours in meetings with city officials, securing permits and variances that would allow for the ambitious mixed-income model. Through it all, he'd felt Edward Richardson's watchful presence, not interfering but keenly interested in every decision, every modification. The billionaire had become a regular fixture at project meeting, often sitting quietly in the corner, absorbing rather than directing. When he did speak, it was usually to ask questions rather than issue commands. What do the residents think about this design? Or have we considered the long-term maintenance costs for the families? The transformation in Edward's approach was striking, though Marcus remained cautiously skeptical. People didn't change overnight, as he kept reminding himself, but they could begin to change, and that beginning could be sparked by a single pivotal moment, like standing on a ledge, contemplating the end of everything. "You're wool gathering again," Olivia observed, interrupting his thoughts as they stood at the construction site. Workers were setting up chairs and a small podium for the ceremony, the heavy equipment already positioned for the symbolic first dig. "Nervous about your speech?" A little, Marcus admitted. Public speaking had never been his forte, even back in his teaching days. "It feels like a lot is riding on this." "It is," Olivia agreed, never one to sugarcoat reality. "But that's because what you're doing matters. You're not just rebuilding apartments, you're rebuilding trust." She had become a constant presence in his professional life and increasingly, his personal one as well. Weekly dinners with her and Edward had become a routine that Lily eagerly anticipated. The family tree presentation at school had indeed been attended by all 3 adults, with Edward surprising everyone by taking the entire morning off, something his executive assistant later confided had never happened in 15 years of employment. "Will the families come today?" Olivia asked, scanning the empty chairs. "After everything, most of them," Marcus nodded. "They're cautiously optimistic. The contracts helped, seeing everything in legally binding language made it real for them. And for Dad," Olivia added. "He's never been so constrained in a development before. Usually he leaves himself a dozen escape hatches. Yet he signed these without hesitation," Marcus noted, still puzzling over the man's motivations. "He feels he owes a debt," Olivia said simply. "Not just to the families, but to you." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do anything special. You saved his life," Olivia countered. "More than that, you reminded him of his humanity when he'd forgotten it existed." Before Marcus could respond, a fleet of Richardson development vehicles arrived, disgorging the displaced Morrison Street residents. They came in family groups, some still wary, others openly curious about the site where their homes would rise again. Elena spotted Marcus and waved, making her way toward him with Carlos and several other shelter residents in tow. "Look at you," she teased, taking in his tailored suit. "All corporate and important. It's just for show," Marcus assured her, relaxing into the familiar banter. "Still the same guy underneath." "Better not be," Carlos said seriously. "We need you to be both, one of us, but with their power." He nodded toward Edward, who had just arrived and was conversing with the construction foreman. "I'm trying," Marcus said. "It's a balancing act." "Speaking of balancing," Elena said, lowering her voice, "what's going on with you and the Richardson woman? You two seem close." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "We work together. She's my boss, technically." Elena raised a skeptical eyebrow. And, bosses typically spend 3 evenings a week at their employees' apartments." "Comes for Lily," Marcus protested. "You formed a bond, if you say so," Elena shrugged, clearly unconvinced. "Just be careful, Marcus. People like that, they live in a different world. They can play at slumming it for a while, but eventually they go back to their penthouses and private jets." Her words stung, partly because they echoed his own private fears. Despite the growing closeness between the Richardsons and his small family, Marcus couldn't quite silence the voice that whispered this was all temporary, a novelty for them, a distraction from their regular lives. "It's time," Olivia called, gesturing toward the podium where Edward was already standing, waiting to begin the ceremony. The groundbreaking proceeded with the expected speech, Edward expressing remorse for the original, displacement and commitment to rectifying it, the mayor praising the innovative public-private partnership, Olivia detailing the technical specifications and timeline. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he abandoned his prepared remarks and spoke directly to the family seated before him. "A home is more than walls and a roof," he said, his voice gaining strength as he continued. "It's memories and security and community. What happened to us? Yes, us. Because I was one of you, wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a trauma. It uprooted us from places where we'd celebrated birthdays, mourned losses, built lives. He paused, scanning the faces watching him, some nodding in recognition, others blinking back tears. This project isn't charity, he continued. It's restoration. It's acknowledging that communities have value beyond property assessments and tax bases. It's understanding that people matter more than profits. He glanced at Edward, who met his gaze steadily. I believe Mr. Richardson has learned that lesson. I believe this project is being undertaken in good faith, and I promise you this. I will be watching every nail hammered, every pipe laid, every decision made to ensure that what rises here truly feels like home again. The applause was genuine if restrained. These were still people who had been hurt, who remained cautious about promises from powerful entities. But there was hope too. Marcus could see it in their expressions. Tentative faith that perhaps this time would be different. After the ceremonial shoveling of dirt and the obligatory photographs, the residents were invited to tour the site with the architects, asking questions and offering input on the staked-out locations of buildings and common areas. Marcus found himself momentarily alone, watching from a slight distance as his two worlds interacted, the residents he'd lived alongside and the corporate team he now worked with. You gave a good speech, Edward said, appearing beside him. Better than mine. Yours was fine, Marcus replied. Very corporate, Edward chuckled, a sound that had become less rare in recent weeks. That's who I've been for so long, I sometimes forget how to be anything else. He paused, watching the residents walking the property. Except when I'm with Lily. She doesn't allow for corporate speak. Marcus smiled despite himself. No, she's pretty good at cutting through nonsense. She reminds me of Olivia when she was that age, Edward said softly. Before I became ... single quotes, he gestured vaguely at himself, encompassing the tailored suit, the security detail hovering nearby, the wealth and power that had shaped his existence for decades. Before you became what? Marcus prompted. This, Edward said simply, this version of Edward Richardson that lost sight of what matters. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching as Olivia knelt beside an elderly resident, carefully explaining something about the site plan spread between them. She likes you, you know, Edward said abruptly. Olivia. More than likes you, I suspect. Marcus tensed. I work for her. Technically, you work for me, Edward corrected mildly, but that's not the point. The point is, I've seen my daughter with a lot of men over the years. Lawyers, doctors, one particularly insufferable hedge fund manager. I've never seen her look at any of them the way she looks at you. Marcus didn't know how to respond. The possibility of something beyond professional collaboration with Olivia had occurred. Of course, he wasn't blind to the chemistry between them, the easy conversation, the lingering glances. But he had deliberately kept those thoughts at bay, focusing instead on the more pressing concerns of rebuilding homes and lives. I'm not in a position to ... single quotes, he began. To what? Care for someone, Edward interrupted, because from what I've seen, you're exceptionally good at that. Our worlds are too different, Marcus said, echoing Elena's earlier warning. Edward considered this. Perhaps. Or perhaps what you've shown me, what you've shown both of us, is that those differences matter less than we thought. He placed a hand briefly on Marcus's shoulder, just something to think about. As Edward walked away to join a group of city officials, Marcus remained rooted to the spot, his mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. Could Edward be right? Had the barrier between their worlds become more permeable than he'd realized? His gaze sought out Olivia again, finding her now deep in conversation with Lily, who had arrived with her after-school program to witness the ceremony. His daughter was gesturing animatedly, clearly describing something important, while Olivia listened with complete attention, nodding and smiling at whatever grand plan Lily was detailing. The sight sent a complicated warmth through Marcus's chest, gratitude for Olivia's genuine interest in his daughter, apprehension about the depth of attachment forming, and underneath it all, a quiet, persistent question. What happens when this is over? When the buildings are complete, the residents moved in, the project concluded. What then? 18 months later, on a warm spring morning, Marcus stood on the rooftop garden of the completed Morrison community, surveying what they had created. Below him, the central courtyard bustled with activity, as residents prepared for the grand opening celebration. Colorful streamers adorned the carefully designed pathways, tables were being set up for a community potluck, and a small stage had been erected for speeches and local musicians. The buildings themselves were a testament to the compromise and collaboration that had defined the project, modern but warm, efficient but welcoming, dignified without being ostentatious. The units reserved for the original Morrison Street families had been completed first, allowing many to move in months ago, while the market trade apartments had filled quickly with young professionals and families drawn to the innovative community concept. Penny for your thoughts, Olivia said, joining him at the railing. In the months they'd worked together, she had abandoned the designer suits for more practical attire that still managed to look effortlessly elegant. Today she wore a simple sundress, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Just taking it all in, Marcus replied. Sometimes I can't believe we actually pulled it off. You pulled it off, Olivia corrected. The rest of us just followed your vision. Marcus shook shook his head, unwilling to claim sole credit. It was a team effort. Everyone contributed, the architects, the residents, your father, and now it's done, Olivia said, a note of wistfulness in her voice. The unspoken question hung between them, the same one that had lingered for months as the project neared completion. What happens now? The corporate apartment had long since been exchanged for one of the units in the new community, Marcus and Lily settling in among the returning families. But his position at Richardson Development had always been tied to this specific project, with no clear path forward once it was complete. Dad wants to see you, Olivia said after a moment. He's in the community room, going over the scholarship details with the education. The Morrison Community Scholarship Fund had exceeded everyone's expectations, growing from Edward's initial endowment to include contributions from other developers, educational institutions, and even several residents who had achieved financial stability and wanted to give back. Already, 5 Morrison youth had received funding for college or vocational programs, with dozens more in the pipeline for future years. Marcus found Edward in deep conversation with Eleanor Washington, who had emerged as a powerful advocate for the educational initiative. At 74, she'd become one of the most respected voices in the community, her decades of experience and no-nonsense approach earning her the unofficial title of Morrison Matriarch. Marcus Edward greeted him warmly. Eleanor has some excellent suggestions for expanding the mentorship component. Of course she does, Marcus smiled. Eleanor never misses an opportunity to improve things. Someone has to keep you young folks honest, the elderly woman retorted good-naturedly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the food tables. The Garcia family is bringing their famous tamales, and I want to make sure they get prime placement. As she departed with remarkable vigor for her age, Edward gestured toward the adjacent office. Could we speak privately for a moment? The small room had been designated as the community manager's office, a position currently filled by Carlos, whose organizational skills had surprised everyone, including himself. The walls were decorated with framed photographs documenting the project's evolution, from the demolition of the original buildings to the construction process to the first families moving into their new homes. Edward closed the door and turned to face Marcus with uncharacteristic hesitation. I wanted to discuss your future at Richardson Development. Marcus nodded, having anticipated this conversation for weeks. I understand the liaison position was project-specific. I've been exploring other options. The school district has some openings for the fall semester. That's precisely what I wanted to talk about, Edward said. I don't want you to leave the company. Oh, Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised by the billionaire's directness. What you've accomplished here, Edward gestured toward the window, indicating the thriving community beyond. It's revolutionary. Not just the buildings, but the process, the genuine collaboration between developer and community, the transparency, the shared ownership model. I want to implement this approach across all Richardson projects moving forward. Marcus stared at him, processing the implication. You're talking about a complete overhaul of how Richardson's development operates. Yes, Edward said simply, and I want you to lead it. I'm creating a new division, community-centered development with authority over all residential projects. Executive Vice President position reporting directly to me. The offer was so far beyond what Marcus had expected that he found himself momentarily speechless. Edward continued into the silence. The salary would be commensurate with the responsibility, 7 figures plus equity, but more importantly, you'd have the power to transform how we build. Not just here, but in cities across the country. Marcus found his voice at last. Why me? You have dozens of executives with decades more experience. Experience in doing things the old way, Edward pointed out. You've proven there's a better way, a more human way. He paused, his expression softening slightly. Besides, I owe you my life. Seems fitting to entrust you with part of my life's work. I don't want the job out of gratitude, Marcus said firmly. Good, because that's not why I'm offering it, Edward replied with equal firmness. I'm offering it because you're the right person, because you see both sides, the business realities and the human impact, because you've earned the trust of communities that have every reason to be skeptical. He extended his hand. The offer stands regardless of any personal consideration. The delicate reference to Marcus's evolving relationship with Olivia hung in the air between them. What had begun as professional collaboration had gradually, cautiously deepened into something more. Dinners that extended late into the evening after Lily was asleep, weekend outings that had nothing to do with work, conversations that ranged far beyond building specifications and community programming. I'll need time to think about it, Marcus said, accepting the handshake. It's a big decision. Of course, Edward nodded. The celebration today, the official opening, that's the end of one chapter, but I hope it's not the end of our story together. As they rejoined the gathering crowd in the courtyard, Marcus spotted Lily at the center of a group of children, organizing some sort of elaborate game involving streamers and chalk drawings on the pavement. She had flourished in the new community, making friends among both the returning Morrison families and the newcomers. Her natural warmth, bridging social divides that adults found more challenging to navigate. Olivia approached, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. Did Dad spring the job offer on you? Marcus accepted the drink with a smile. You knew about it? I may have helped develop the proposal, she admitted, but the idea was all his. He's been planning it for months. Before Marcus could respond, the sound of a microphone being tested drew their attention to the small stage. Carlos, acting as master of ceremonies, was preparing to officially welcome everyone to the opening celebration. Citizens of Morrison Community, he began, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Today we celebrate not just new buildings, but a new beginning. A community reborn. Cheers and applause interrupted him briefly before he continued. Many of you know the story of how we got here. How we lost our homes, how we struggled, and how an unexpected alliance formed between those who had been displaced and those who had done the displacing. He gestured toward Marcus and the Richardsons. What you might not know is that this alliance began with a single act of compassion in a moment of crisis. Marcus tensed, unsure how much of the rooftop story Carlos knew or planned to share. I don't know the details, Carlos continued, seeming to sense Marcus's concern, but I know that when Marcus Reeves had every reason to turn away, he chose to reach out instead. And in doing so, he set in motion everything we see around us today. The crowd's attention turned to Marcus, making him distinctly uncomfortable with the spotlight. Olivia slipped her hand into his, a small gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by those nearby. As the speeches continued and the celebration moved into full swing, Marcus found himself drifting among different groups, sketching up with Elena, who had become the community's unofficial historian, congratulating the first scholarship recipients, introducing newcomers to longtime Morrison residents. Throughout it all, he observed Edward doing the same, the billionaire developer, now on a first-name basis with people he would never have acknowledged 2 years ago. Later, as the spring day faded into evening and strings of lights illuminated the courtyard, Marcus found a quiet moment alone with Olivia on a bench beneath a newly planted oak tree. "Have you decided about the job?" she asked, her shoulder brushing against his. "Not yet," he admitted. "It's an incredible opportunity, but but you're worried about us," Olivia finished for him. "About how a personal relationship might complicate a professional one." Marcus nodded, struck once again by her directness. "Among other things, I've worked so hard to maintain my integrity in all this, to be true to where I came from while embracing where I might be going." "I understand," Olivia said softly. "But consider this, maybe the real integrity isn't in keeping those worlds separate, but in bringing them together, and being the same person in both places." Marcus considered her words, watching as Lily danced with Edward in the center of the courtyard, the billionaire developer following the 7-year-old's exuberant lead with surprising grace. Nearby, Eleanor Washington was deep in conversation with Richardson Development's chief financial officer, gesturing emphatically about something that had the executive nodding in agreement. "Look at what we've built," Olivia said, following his gaze. "Not just buildings, but bridges between people who might never have known each other existed. It started with a desperate moment on a rooftop," Marcus mused. "A moment when all those differences fell away and we were just two human beings facing the same void." Olivia squeezed his hand. "Some connections are formed in fire. They tend to be the strongest." As night fell completely and residents began drifting toward their homes, Marcus found himself back on the rooftop garden, this time with Edward, Olivia, and Lily. The little girl had insisted on showing Edward the view of the city lights, her enthusiasm undimmed by the long day of celebration. "It's like stars, but on the ground," she declared, pointing toward the glittering urban landscape. "It is indeed," Edward agreed, lifting her up to see better over the railing. "Each light is a story, a life being lived." "Like our story?" Lily asked. "The one that started when Daddy helped you on a different route?" Edward glanced at Marcus, a silent question in his eyes. Marcus nodded slightly. Lily knew a simplified version of their beginning, one appropriate for her age but honest about the essence of what had transpired. "Yes," Edward told her, "like our story, which proves that even on the darkest days, new beginnings are possible. If you're brave enough to reach out," Marcus added quietly, "brave enough to accept the hand that's offered." The four of them stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city shine below them, a vastly different perspective than the desperate one from that fateful day. Marcus felt Olivia's hand find his again, and this time, he didn't pull away. Some distances couldn't be bridged in a day or a month or even a year. The gaps between worlds, between wealth and poverty, between power and vulnerability remained real and significant. But standing there with his daughter beside him and his unlikely new family around him, Marcus understood that the first step in crossing any divide was simply recognizing the humanity on the other side. He had done that for Edward on a rooftop ledge 18 months ago. Edward and Olivia had done it for him and Lily in the months that followed, and together they had created something none of them could have built alone, not just a community of building, but a community of lives, interconnected and strengthened by their very differences. "So," Olivia asked softly, "what comes next?" Marcus looked at the three people beside him, the little girl who was his heart, the man whose life he had saved, the woman who had somehow found her way past his carefully constructed defenses, and knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. "I don't know exactly," he answered honestly, "but I'm looking forward to finding out."